Welcome to a very special live episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, March 8th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 176 days, the game against Michigan in 267 days. Joined by Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. We just got to watch spring practice number 2 for the Buckeyes, and then got to talk to a whole bunch of Ohio State players. Mostly, seemed like it was all defense. I think it was all defense today, yeah. Talked to Jim Knowles and a bunch of returning Buckeyes on the defensive side of the ball. I guess, Tony, let's start with practice. Any big takeaways, any big observations from practice number 2?
No, not really. The one thing I wanted to find out was the situation at nickel behind Jordan Hancock, and saw Lorenzo Styles Jr. there, asked Jim Knowles about him afterwards and said he's got obviously good size. He's listed at 6'1", 195, but the speed is the other thing that they really like there. I also think it's an underrated factor that he's been a receiver. He's played inside and outside, so that's another little added bonus there. So he was working with the 2s there, and, of course, Miles Lockhart working with the 3s at nickel. So that was one of the things I wanted to go in and look at. Everything else seemed pretty similar to what we saw on Tuesday. They did mix up the offensive line a little bit because when we got here and they started out, Donovan Jackson was with the 2s. So I don't think he's been demoted.
Probably not.
And also Luke Montgomery was with the 2s. So they're just moving some guys, just mixing and matching.
Spring practice number 2 always seems to me like this is the one where you figure out, okay, what did I not look at practice 1? And then you look at it practice 2, because there's so much stuff, different stuff going on, and you can only be in one place at a time. And for me, it's okay. Who did I not get pictures of the last time? But it's just not much changes from practice 1 to practice 2. It's just more of, okay, gathering more of that initial data to then have stuff to compare it to. Buckeyes now head out for spring break. They will be off next week. Yes. Well, we'll see. We'll see how much that actually happens. I mean, this is a pretty focused group. I mean, this is a pretty driven group. I'm going to start our conversation with Denzel Burke, where a lot of great interview shows start. Denzel Burke said, I'm just going to read the direct quote here. There were a lot of good direct quotes from Denzel Burke. Quote, "Natty or bust, we've got to win it all." That's
my spring break.
That's I think he means the national championship. He didn't specify,
right.
but
I'm a Natty light guy anyway. So,
yes. No, so national championship or bust. It basically was more or less. I'm going to paraphrase here. You look around and look at the talent you've got. Like you know what the goals are. The goals are beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national championship. So far, these fourth-year players have not done that. So this is the year where no more excuses, no more anything. I think the fan base, the expectation is here's what it is, and it sounds like for a lot of the players, at least for Denzel Burke, that's the expectation as well.
Yeah, and as I were listening to this, because we talked to like all of the juniors and seniors that came back, or not all of them, but that was the bulk of who we talked to on defense. And I was trying to remember which of them was it that said this was a group decision, and which of them was it that said this other thing. It's because they all sound the same in terms of what they're talking about, the purpose. So I don't know if it was Jordan or Denzel said, I want to leave with something. And it could have been JT Tuimoloau, who also could have said it was a joint decision. Like they're all speaking from this experience, this collective experience, this collective decision that they got together and decided basically as a group, we're going to come back. And if you can't come back, do come back. And that's what you've seen. And so they're all speaking the same language. And like every great team needs great communication. There's some good communicators out here.
Well, and you hear some of the same stuff that when Ryan Day's talking to the team, we hear some of that coming out of their mouths as well in terms of, the no talent stuff and, all the real attention to detail kind of stuff. Burke talked about that at one point. The message is getting through, and you would think, that you would expect the message to get through, because when these guys came, a lot of them to Ohio State, they were probably thinking, all right, 3 years off to the NFL, going to beat Michigan 3 times, maybe win 2, I don't know, maybe 3 national championships. The Big Ten championship is just a given when they showed up. They showed up in 2021, and it was just sort of, okay, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, you beat Michigan if you get to play Michigan, and then you go win the Big Ten championship. That's just what happens every year. And that has not been their experience. So, it makes sense that that they were able to kind of round everyone up and run it back for another year. Denzel Burke, again, in a moment of extreme candor, was asked, why'd you decide to come back? And the first thing he said was, well, to make more money, because he was projected. He was given a late first, early second round projection, and said, I can do better than that. And betting on himself. And with the realities of NIL now, it is no longer a make the money or don't make the money conversation. It is do you want to make some money here and bet on yourself, or do you want to take more immediately? So that was interesting. He also, Tony, was asked about the wide receivers. This is another, you don't want to read too much into this, but I'm going to read a little bit into it. The three names he said, the first three names when he talked about the wide receivers, Carnell Tate, Mecca Ibuka, JJ, Jeremiah Smith.
Interesting.
This is much like each of these individual practices. This is just a data point. But when you get guys who are just sort of, it's not like I'm going to name the entire wide receiver room just so I don't leave anyone out. Like sometimes that's how Ryan Day is. He's like, he doesn't want to name someone because he doesn't want to leave anyone out. Denzel Burke is about as straightforward as it gets. And so when he says that, it's, he kind of followed it up with, I don't want to put too much on him, but it's kind of like, it's there for him to be the next dude here.
And you can contrast that with when Denzel Burke was asked about Jeremiah Smith at the Cotton Bowl in the days leading up to the Cotton Bowl. And he said, I want to see it first. Mm-hmm. And now we're here. He's seen it. So this, to me, I have always been, I've been the opponent of day one starter. Like you've talked about it, Mark Givler's talked about it, Kevin Noon have talked about it. Generally, if you guys are like in agreement on something, I know I'm in the right to stay away. But if Denzel Burke is talking about somebody that I don't need any more proof than that. So, I guess I was wrong. I'm not going to say it. But
no, it's too soon to say for sure.
If he's talking about somebody, then that means, and if he's talking about somebody in a positive way, that's significant to me.
And someone else who was talking about it in a positive way was Jermaine Matthews. Said, that's my guy. That's, he was asked, is he going to be like the next Denzel Burke? And he didn't want to, he's a different guy and all that kind of stuff. But, very clearly, he is a big believer in Jermaine Matthews, who is just going into his second year now. And you got a chance to talk to some folks about Jermaine Matthews as well.
Yeah, grabbed Jim Knowles and asked him basically, because my question is, what happens if Denzel Burke or Davison Igbinosun goes down? Because at times last year, they would just move Jordan Hancock over. Now, when Lathan Ransom went down last year and Sonny Styles had to play strong safety, there was no other nickel, so Jordan Hancock couldn't go, so they started Jermaine Matthews. They did that out of because they couldn't put Jordan Hancock there. So I asked Jim Knowles, like, if that happens this year, is Jermaine Matthews able to go? He's like, we did it last year. I'm like, no, but if you're not moving Jordan Hancock, like, are you so confident in Jermaine Matthews that you don't need to move Jordan Hancock? He's like, yeah, Jermaine is there now. He's to that point. So, like, I would, in past years, like under Kerry Combs, he would be a third starter. Like, he would be part of the rotation. I don't think that's going to happen here, but they are going to have to play more players. And that's something else I asked Knowles, like, have you guys talked about that? Like, among the staff, he's like, we started to. It's still very early, but they know, like, they're going to have to play players, and you're going to have to communicate that to the young guys that you're going to play, communicate that to the older guys, like, we're going to pull you out at times, just because it is a long season. But yeah, I was interested to find out a couple of things, and that was one of them in terms of Jermaine Matthews. It's to the point now where it's not robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's, both guys have plenty of money and they can loan it to you. Like, we're all good here.
I'm going to take a brief diversion from Denzel Burke just to transition off of the Lathan Ransom conversation. Mm-hmm. Lathan Ransom talked about the fact that he has a Liz Frank issue. That was the injury he suffered in his left foot. That's like one of those like bones in the middle. I think Demetrius Knox, when he broke his foot right at the end of the 2018 Michigan game, I think that was the same thing. And he said this is one of these things where you're told how long it's supposed to take. And much like his leg injury in the Rose Bowl, he was able to get back a lot sooner than expected. Credited trainer Adam Stewart, who's one of those. This is another one of these names that I think average folks don't necessarily know, but it's one of those names that the people in the building talk about a lot, just in terms of training and rehab and, getting guys back. And when guys talk about, hey, I'm in the building basically 24/7 trying to get back from this for the Michigan game, the bowl game, whatever it is, that's the guy they're working with. He's, he said he basically started feeling more or less 100% during winter workouts. I think they're going to be a little patient with him and work him back a little more gradually. But he is out there. He was not one of those names that, they said not going to play.
Right.
So he was out there. Having a safety like him back, having a safety like Caleb Downs back, Denzel Burke was asked about that. He said, let me find it. He's going to be able to jump a lot more routes knowing that they have your back. I mean, having that safety, having that eraser behind you lets you play more aggressively as a corner, which, I think when you look at the fact that Ohio State has not necessarily produced as many interceptions, as many turnovers the last couple of years as you might have expected, safety play has been, inconsistent, let's say, at times. If you've got someone like Caleb Downs behind you, you can be a little more aggressive, and that can pay off in a lot of different ways.
And Jordan Hancock talked a little bit about that as well, saying he wants more interceptions this year. He's planning to get more interceptions. He's setting the target right now at about 5. He had a couple last year, dropped a couple, so that is stuck with him. But yeah, if you've got somebody back there as that center fielder that you can trust and is going to be back there, you can be a much more aggressive, and you can design things to be more aggressive. But the freedom that gives the corners to not necessarily worry so much. And now get burnt once and you might get yanked, but I don't think you're going to see Jim Knowles, because I think they've kind of played passive a little bit last year. Just let's cool up on the 60-yard gains. Let's keep stuff in front of us. Maybe now they can continue to edge out into the more aggressive silver bullet type of defense that a lot of people want to see.
Well, and I heard a couple people today talk about being a little more diverse in some of the scheme stuff they're going to do, and we heard that, I think, we heard that from someone, I think, on Monday this week as well. Just, this is the advantage of, okay, you have veteran guys, so they know, you don't need to go back to square one with here's how we line up. You've got that. It's year 3 in this Jim Knowles defense. So, he has talked about sort of unpacking that toolbox and taking out a few more tools. It's very easy to say that this time of year. We'll see what it looks like come October and November. But it feels like logically they should be able to be more diverse on defense and more aggressive.
Well, I don't know if you're over here with Jim Knowles when he was talking about what they can do. He's like, and if you got Hero Canoe, maybe we can plug that in and go with a double eagle. And I'm like, then he's like, yeah, get a 5-man front, bare front. We can, Jack Sawyer, and I'm trying to teach Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau some outside linebacker stuff so that they can put those two guys with some defensive tackles, like a 5-man front, and really just, he said it's about finding the best 11. So if you've got 5 guys like that up front that are the best 11, and he did clarify, like, we're still 4-2-5.
Yes.
But you've got to be multiple. And then 4-2-5 with the quote, Sonny Styles as part of that linebacker crew, a 4-1-1.5,
5.5.
Yeah. And so there's obviously that versatility that he has. They can do different things there. When everybody's coming back, you've got to then find ways to utilize them, which he also talked about several times, 3 linebackers, and including CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles in the same alignment with Cody Simon. Gabe Powers he said he may have been the most improved linebacker defensive player last year from the course of like now till the end of the season. And so he's another guy that could factor in as that 4th linebacker.
One of the fun things about spring is there's a little bit of overlap of the last year guys and the this year guys. So, for example, Steel Chambers, who graduated off to the NFL, was actually here in the building today, just kind of doing some workout stuff. And, so you'll still see some guys who's like, wait a minute, you don't work here anymore. But
you don't even go here.
He was here today, and he actually had, classic Steel Chambers. We always talk about him as one of the best interviews. It was always kind of like, I'll go do that table. I'll go talk to Steel. You guys can talk to whoever. He had a great question for Cody Simon. He sat down and said, I saw, Cody, you have a green dot helmet. What is that? What is that like? Because got to remember they are bringing in the helmet radios like the NFL has. And so Cody Simon was talking about that a little bit, said, it was a little loud today. They're still they're still very much figuring this out. And, he was saying like, oh, we don't have to signal anymore. Like, well, I don't know. I don't know if we know if we're going to signal anymore. It's just, this is very, very much the first day you just got your, first, whatever, iPhone or laptop or whatever. And you're still like, they're still in the like, oh, I've got to update the software. I've got to go, whatever. But it's, this is the time of year when take all the time you need to figure out, hey, how much do I need to communicate? When do I need to communicate? What do I need to communicate? How do I then communicate to the other people? Because at one point during practice, I saw Ryan Day standing right next to the quarterbacks, and he was like talking to the quarterbacks, and then the quarterbacks were talking to the guys in the huddle. So I think it was kind of a dry run sort of thing for some of the young quarterbacks there as well. That's going to be in a year filled with a million different changes in college football. That feels like one that we probably need to be talking about more.
Yeah, and when you mentioned this before the show, I was like, shoot, none of us asked Jim Knowles about that. That would have been a great opportunity.
Why are we not as good at our jobs? Why is Steel Chambers better at our jobs than we are? That's my question.
So it is frustrating. But this is also our first time to talk to Jim Knowles. Am I making excuses? Yes. The newness of it. Now, they've talked about there will still be some signals like for, up-tempo when you're doing things quickly. You're still going to have signals. Totally off topic, but not really. Do you remember your first radio that you ever got? Like your very first own personal radio?
I do, yes.
And what was it?
It was like a little clock radio thing that my fondest memory of listening to the clock radio was either listening to, we didn't have cable, so I would listen to the Rangers and Knicks games or the Mets games if they were not on Channel 9 on the radio, WFAN, Sports Radio 660 AM out of New York, first sports radio station in the country. That, and also listening to the little local radio station on mornings when it had snowed to find out if I had school or had a 2-hour delay or what the deal was. What about you? This feels like this is setting up a great Tony Gerdeman story.
No, it's not a great story. It's just I do remember my first radio. It would have been like 1982 or something. So you can Google this. Just a little Smurf AM radio, and just put like Google Smurf AM radio 1982 or something like that. And it's just a little Smurf head. Blue, and I think it's like a wrist, and I'll tell you what, back then there's no difference between AM and FM radio. It all had the same music, so it was pretty cool.
All right, so
I told you it wasn't a good story.
With that,
I was just curious.
After that diversion, I think I've hit most of my
diversion.
I think I've hit most of my Denzel Burke quotes. The only one that I wanted to hit on was he was asked about Will Howard, transfer quarterback, and he kind of said like, well, it's only been 2 practices, kind of want to see more, but, and that's like, yeah, I mean, it's been 2 practices, but he's not going to gas anyone up if it's, so that's, and it's been 2 practices. You don't know the offense yet. It's fine. That's not a problem yet. But that's another one of those, like, I kind of want to talk to Denzel Burke again in 2 weeks and see if we have the Jermaine Smith change of tone that you mentioned earlier.
Well, and you said earlier how some guys will just run through names. And so we're talking to Jordan Hancock, and I'm like, it's probably too early, but do you have any assessment for the slot receivers? He's like, oh yeah, they're all good. You got Bryson Rogers is good. Brandon Ennis is good. Keon Gray's kind of been going back and forth. He's good. Of course, Mac, he's good. And so like the example of everybody's good versus I need to see it.
Yeah.
But and Jordan Hancock did say I've seen all of those guys last year, so he knows what's happening. But it is very early, and we get ushered out right before the 7-on-7 stuff starts, right before the 11-on-11 stuff starts. But we will eventually get to see some of it, and we'll see if Denzel Burke is lying to us about some people.
I suspect he is one of those people that I think I would take his word as closer to gospel than just about anyone else in the building, just because it's like, I need you to tell me something that is not great. Because this is the time of year, when it's like, it's spring training in baseball, it's spring football, everything's great. Everyone's in the best shape of their life. Everyone who has gained 10 pounds has gotten so much stronger. Yes. Everyone who has lost 10 pounds has gotten so much faster. It's all good. All the news is good. Everyone is going to be back for the season. No one has a serious injury. Everything's wonderful. Everyone's going to go undefeated this year. when you have someone who is willing to shoot you straight on some of that stuff, that is incredibly valuable. I keep talking and I keep thinking, I hope that the nice things that we're saying about Denzel Burke does not cause Denzel Burke to not get invited out to talk to us anymore. I hope he is, I think, a respected veteran voice on the team. And I think people know he's going to, it's not disrespectful. It's just honest.
Yeah, well, and the first time we ever talked to Denzel Burke as a true freshman, I walked away that is a mature guy. And I guess at that point, it shouldn't have been any secret that he was able to win a starting job. Now, the talent level here now is much higher than when he arrived. Jordan Hancock talked about that as well. But he has always been a very serious guy, even as a true freshman. He's just very matter of fact. There's no hopery, no wishery. It's just this. And it reminded me back then of talking to Bradley Roby, who was, my plan is to redshirt as a freshman, start for 2 years, go to the NFL as a first rounder. And Denzel Burke has this, plan. Sometimes things happen where you're well, I'll adjust my plan, but I'll also benefit greatly from it, get more money, that sort of thing. Bigger and faster. Jordan Hancock has added weight. I wrote about that this morning in terms of I went through the minutia of the roster, and I think that the team has gained 13 inches in height and 130 some pounds, something like that. But also Jordan Hancock has put on 10 pounds to be able to handle the full-time aspect of him playing nickel, because last year he wasn't full-time until the last 5 games of the season when Lathan Ransom was out. Prior to that, he was in on passing down. So he's bigger and stronger, and also trying to maintain that same speed and agility.
All right, so that will wrap it up for day 2 of spring ball. Another very interesting day here inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Really, really good interviews. I mean, it's spring. Everyone should be excited, but it's genuinely exciting and interesting to be in here. There's so many interesting players to see, so many interesting guys to talk to. We'll wrap this up with what happened after practice, as we're in here for interviews. That I always feel so that's always some of the most interesting stuff, because that was last year we would always see Marvin Harrison in here on the Monarch machine. Every single day you'd see Marvin Harrison in here on the Monarch machine. After practice today on the Monarch machine, we saw Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, Coach Awantwi, and Jaden Ballard. That's just one of those. Next time we're in here, let's see who's on the Monarch machine. It's interesting, Tony, how all the really good receivers seem to be also the ones who work the hardest. It's real weird how that happens. Also got to see at one point, Caden McDonald, the second-year defensive tackle, was working with Eric Mensa, the first-year defensive tackle. And I tweeted out a picture also of JT Tuimoloau working with Edric Houston, just on, this is all real minor stuff. It's just little footwork stuff or whatever. But that's the stuff where, we talk all the time about the culture in the wide receiver room or the culture in the defensive line room. This is where the culture gets passed down, because there was someone out there a few years ago helping JT Tuimoloau. I know JT Tuimoloau was helping Edric Houston, and in a couple of years, Edric Houston will be helping someone else. Yeah, I saw Lincoln Keenholz doing that Tuesday with Julian saying, just helping through a drill, saying, just preparing him for what is going to be happening. So, yeah, I mean, nobody can get through this on their own. They've all had somebody help them, and this is part of the paying it forward aspect of it. So that'll do it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed that. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, but a lot of interesting stuff. We're going to have all of these interviews uploaded in their entirety at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle a little later on, if they're not already up there. Should be a lot of good stuff. The Denzel Burke one I delayed the start of the live show to put the Denzel Burke one up already, so you can watch the Denzel Burke one. The Natty or Bust quote comes about 6 minutes into that, but the entire thing is worth watching, worth listening to. We'll probably do some morning shows featuring some of those clips in the coming days as well, because I know you guys generally like those shows, and we've got a lot of guys we talked to this week, and a lot of new stuff to share with you. So when we are doing all that sharing, we'll be doing that at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, and of course at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. There's some recruiting news potentially bubbling as well, and had a couple recruits in for practice on Thursday, and then got our whole team of X's and O's guys making you a smarter football fan, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.